What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Three for the Money. Okay, as we come down the home stretch, we have 4 games this week. We got a national championship. That's 5. We got an AFC and NFC. That's 7. And the Super Bowl. So I count 8 football games left, which makes me really sad. I don't count spring football. So we really got to take these games in, enjoy them, and most importantly, gamble on them.
You don't count the Pro Bowl either?
I do not. Do they even still play, or is that flag football, or no
I have
clue
no
what they're
idea.
even doing there? But I got my main man Stuckey from the Action Network. You can find him basically everywhere. Action Network podcast, Big Bets on Campus. I actually watched a little college hoops the other day. Stuckey Cooper Flag looks pretty freaking good. He played Miami, that probably has like me and you on the squad. But holy shit, that guy's. Don't see how he's not going to be good in the NBA. But other than that, Stuckey, how we doing?
Good. Yeah. Just getting ready for it's crazy time for me. I mean, I have doing this, just did my NFL podcast, Action Network podcast. After this, have National Championship preview podcast, Big Bets on Campus, and then college basketball podcast for the weekend. So crazy time of the year, but excited for the football. For my money, it's the best weekend of the NFL season.
You gamble a lot on college hoops right now, or do you wait for the football season to end? Or are you in the
Yeah,
conference
I'm
play?
not as much volume as I will have, especially like it's like college football. These rosters are changing so drastically that it's hard for me to keep up. I mean, because it's so much more work to keep up in the off season with college football, like and to try to keep up with college basketball and college football is crazy. So, yeah, I'm betting it, but volume will really start to pick up here after this weekend, get college football in the rear view, and then NFL would only be 3 games left. So, but excited for to enjoy these last football games. This weekend is usually awesome. There's 2 favorites of a touchdown or more. We haven't had 2 favorites sweep against the spread, so both cover multiple. We haven't had multiple favorites cover of 7 or more points on divisional weekend since 2001. 16 times we've had multiple favorites of 7 or more points since 2001. All 16, at least one dog covered. So history says at least the Chiefs or the Lions are going to get a scare here. And maybe an NFL favorite of 7 or more points is due to go down in the playoffs because we've seen 18 straight win outright, which is an NFL record since the merger. The last time a favorite of 7 or more points lost in the playoffs, you got to go back to 2019, I believe, when the Ravens lost to the Titans.
Were the 49ers a touchdown favorite last year against the Packers at home?
No,
You
that
counting them?
line,
Probably 6. Maybe
yeah,
might have been a little under. But that had an upset written all over it. Wouldn't have been quite a touchdown. Obviously, last year the Chiefs, which is crazy to say, but it is true, they did upset the Bills based on the gambling line, right? Which, in
yep.
fairness, like I think a lot of people, I didn't bet against them that game, bet against them the next 2, but I think a lot of people thought they were going to go down, and they did not.
Ravens too. Ravens too. That was like a 4 point favorite. Yeah, and the divisional round last year, that did count as one of the not covering. I think the 49ers were like 10 point favorites in that game. They only won by 3.
Against the
Um,
Packers.
yeah. So
Didn't just win by 3. I mean, they were down most of the game. I mean,
yeah.
they were in trouble. I mean, they were in major trouble.
Yep. Yeah, that was it's close. So we're kind of overdue for one. It's hard to see the Chiefs ever going down.
Well,
And
let's just start with that game. All lines here
okay.
presented by DraftKings. Obviously, they played, a couple weeks ago. Um, Houston actually was more than serviceable in that game and hit a big play to Tank Dell, and then his leg shattered, knee shattered, and his career feels like in jeopardy now, and it just derailed Houston. I mean, you had guys on the sideline crying. Uh, there's just, I mean, he looked awesome in that game. Second straight year, obviously, he has a devastating knee injury in the end zone. I mean, it was, I don't even know what to say. And then, a lot like the Packers, I feel like Houston had high hopes. And then when you watched them, even though they both made the playoffs, I know Houston won the division. Part of it is their division sucked. Something just looked off most of the year. And even in that game last week against the Chargers, you're like, God, this team looks like shit. And then that final series of the first half, the snap, CJ, they almost miss it. And then he makes an incredible play and they never kind of look back. And Herbert fell apart. And the Chiefs, who were winning every game, everyone's like, God, this team's not that good, not that good. Finally get healthy and look incredible. And now it feels like I don't know, a borderline lock. Maybe that they won't. I don't know if everyone would bet their life savings that they're going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl because of how good the Bills and Ravens are, but it does feel like universally it would be stunning. Not only if the Chiefs don't win this game, but like win this game by a lot. They're 8.5 point favorite. Like I would have said anything's possible, but watching the way they played when they had to flip a switch, and let's face it, a little like the Kevin Durant Warriors, their season was really always about January, and it kind of they proved actually they started taking it seriously in December, and last year it took the Raiders game. So I actually think Houston's a little underrated because they have such high end players. Like CJ's obviously can be really good. Nico is would start for every team in the NFL. They have a two sweet pass rushers. They have the best corner. It's like they have high end impact players. Problem is their offensive line is a major problem, and the Chiefs' defensive line is going to be well rested. So it feels like a lot of points for me. 8.5. Uh, but man, I have a hard time if the Chiefs are clicking and Houston. I mean, they played a good half of football. Could this thing get ugly fast? Because if I was gonna take a side, I think you'd have to lay the points with Kansas City.
Yeah, I think the line's a bit too high. I mean, Mahomes and his team rarely ever cover these numbers. I mean, I think they're 0-6 this year against the spread as a favorite over a touchdown. I do think it's not a great matchup for the Texans. I mean, first of all,
Started doing it the last couple weeks down the stretch.
yeah, but they were short favorites. I mean, like they were -3. They closed against the Texans at home
That's crazy.
on Christmas. Now they're -8.5. Now the Texans lost Jimmy Ward in that game, and then more importantly, they lost Tank Dell. And they were cooking that Chiefs defense before he got hurt. They also had offensive line injuries. They were playing without a couple other defensive starters that they'll have back. I think the Chiefs defense, but well, first of all, I should say, dome team going outdoors, frigid temperatures, not ideal. And historically, those teams have not fared well. Although, for what it's worth, home teams coming off of a bye in the divisional round, only 42% against the spread as a favorite of seven or more, 17-24 against the spread. But you look at this game, I do think that the Chiefs defense is overrated, and they're going to be healthy. Jalen Watson should be back. That helps their secondary. But if you look all year, I mean, did they play? The Ravens put up 450 in week one. After that, did they play a single team that was healthy? I mean, week two, Higgins was out. The Falcons, that was when Cousins was in. They lost two of their best offensive linemen in the first half to injury. You had no McConkey in one matchup with the Chargers. The other one, their tackles were out and Herbert was hurt. Tank Dell gets hurt for Houston. We just mentioned that. San Francisco lost literally every single skill position player either before or during the game early on. No Evans or Godwin for Tampa Bay. I mean, I can go on and on. So I do think that the pass defense is a little overrated. Now, is Houston the team that's really going to take advantage of that? Probably not. I mean, their offensive line is not great. Uh, what is the path here for Houston? Because I actually think Chiefs defense a little overrated. Their pass defense and their run defense has been really good this year. They've really improved in that aspect. But their Chiefs offense might be underrated because, I mean, you have Travis Kelce rested. We always see him up his game. I think he's gone 14 straight playoff games with five or more catches, which is an NFL record, and 70 or more yards in all of them, which is just insane. But you got Hollywood Brown back, Hopkins more assimilated into the offense. It's helped out Worthy, Pacheco back healthy. Curious to see what they do at left tackle with Joe Tooney. Do they put him out there? It hurts their run game. Or do they put him at left guard where their run game's more effective? I don't know. But this offense could just come out firing and just the short passes. And that you might really miss Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie here. But the Texans do have a path. Their run D's really good, and they have two really good corners on the outside, and they have two elite edge rushers that can cause havoc. So getting the Chiefs into passing downs and then getting to Mahomes. And you're going to have to cause turnovers. I mean, I go back the last time a 15-win team lost in the divisional round, you got to go back 2011, the Giants, who were 9-7 and ended up winning the Super Bowl. Uh, they they beat the 15-1 Packers with a Hall of Fame quarterback. And how do they do it? Turnovers. Forced, I think, four turnovers. And Hakeem Nicks went nuts. I think he had like 180 yards in the first half. That has to be Nico Collins, and you got to force turnovers. So, but it's hard to see. I mean, what you're going to have to do here is you're not going to run it with Mixon. And the Texans have increased their early down pass rate from like 50% to like 65% since week 12, which is top three in the league, which I think is smart. You're going to have to just, I think, spread them out. Your receiving options aren't great. And you're just going to have to hope Stroud is on. Stroud has to use his legs. And I do think if you're looking for a prop, one that I do like, Dalton Schultz over 33, 34 and a half, 35 and a half, wherever it is, yards, over 3.5 catches. Tight end has gone over 40 yards, 12 of 17 games for Kansas, 12 of 16 games against Kansas City, excluding the finale. They're one of the worst defenses in the NFL against tight ends. Tight ends are averaging about 6 catches for 70 yards per game. They just put Stover, their backup, on IR. And when Dell went out against the Chiefs earlier, Schultz ended up having 5 catches for 45 yards. So you're gonna all the attention is gonna be on Nico Collins. You're gonna have McDuffie following him around. Schultz has got to be the check down. You got to get the ball to him quick. You're probably gonna be playing from behind. So I think it could be a big day for Schultz. I think it's a bit too many points, but because the Chiefs just don't play to cover these numbers, right? Like if you look at the Bills and the Ravens, they're gonna have all these blowouts. But the Chiefs, they're gonna be methodical. And at the end of the game, they know their defense is good. They're going to have like a 8-minute drive and then end up kneeing on the ball. And so I think it's a bit too many points. The Texans defense is elite, but it's definitely scary. Indoor team going outdoors, frigid temperatures. Kansas City rested. Offense could just look a lot better. And that Stroud behind that offensive line trying to deal with Chris Jones could be problematic.
One thing I played is you can get Travis Kelce plus 150 just to score a touchdown. I mean, last year in the first two playoff games, or I guess the ones against the Bills and the Ravens, he had two against the Bills and one against the Ravens. Obviously, the Ravens kind of the one set the tone. To me, he's a pretty big tone setter for them. And we talked about them saving up. I mean, of all the guys they save, obviously Mahomes, they're very dependent on him to make big plays. Chris Jones definitely throughout the season, like Travis has shown life over the last month, but really this is what he plays for now. Like I think it's an auto hammer if you can get plus money odds on Travis Kelce scoring a touchdown in any playoff game the Chiefs play.
Kelsey props are just for free money, no matter where the books put the line. Historically, it's insane. Yeah, he's had 3 weeks too. He's probably will look as fresh and uh, rejuvenated as he has since last playoffs.
Let's go to the next game. I mean, it's kind of crazy that the two games on Saturday, one's an 8.5 point line, the other is a 9.5 point line. Pretty crazy swing, right? This game opened up in Detroit at like 5.5, 6 points, and is now on DraftKings. It's 9.5. Who knows? I mean, maybe it gets 10 by the time they kick off. Uh, I feel more confident in this spot for Detroit than I do in Kansas City, like you just listed. I mean, they just play in a lot of close games. They just happen to win like 99.9% of them. I think Detroit really showed something in that Week 18 game against Minnesota. They're even more well rested. they get the unique advantage of like when their coaches interview, like I'm seeing Kellen Moore's interviewing, and I mean, it's just the rules are the rules on Friday afternoon of a playoff week. Like their guys got to bang them out during the bye week before they even technically knew who they were playing. So it doesn't take away anything. And like I think all the pressures on the Lions in the NFC. They have home field. They have playoff experience now. Like literally all their guys that hadn't been like the Jared Goffs coming from other teams got to play in 3 playoff games last year. And this Washington team's an incredible story. And listen, I take them seriously. They're obviously well coached. They're tough. The coach is good. Terry McLaurin's a fantastic player. But this feels like a spot. I mean, I just think Detroit can go pedal to the metal. And listen, we talked about rookie quarterbacks, and he definitely passed that first test on the road in Tampa, which I wouldn't exactly say is the craziest place to play on the road. And their defense, especially the secondary, not great right now. But like, I'm not trying to diminish anything away from Jaden Daniels. The guy's been a fucking baller this year. I don't know, man. I don't see how Washington keeps this thing close. I like Detroit here big.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got to give credit to Daniels. I had the Bucks last week, and
Same.
he like it came down to Baker Mayfield. He botched that handoff, and he botched and he fumbled the snap. Guess who didn't make any of those mistakes? It was Daniels, and he was poised throughout.
I'm not.
And
I'm not trying to make an excuse for Baker. I think for Liam Cohen though to have, assuming that's like a quick end around, try to get to the edge. I think you gotta, you know, mitigate your potential disasters there and just run some basic plays in spots like that. Like that's a little risky in the second half of a tight game in the playoffs, is it not?
that's fair. Also, it's second and one, it's third and one, and you go backwards. If it's second and one, why not take a shot if you want to do that, or just pick up the first down, sneak the ball. I mean, do a tush push. In 3 to 5 years from now, everyone will do a tush push. It's unstoppable. Instead, you go backwards, and then you kick a field goal. And that was a disastrous situation. So yeah, I thought Cohen got too cute at times, but
It feels like everyone's instituted it. Like the Ravens do it with Mark Andrews. Were they doing it with? I think they've done it this year with Mariota, who's a little bigger than Jaden. It's like
yep.
everyone has their own kind of version of it. Most people don't have a quarterback that squats 8,000 pounds like Jalen, but you have other players on the team that
You have other
basically can
players. You
just
just practice once a week, practice taking snaps and moving forward. I mean, it's not difficult.
yeah.
And that the success rate is 95%. How many times have you seen a game where these teams are lining up in shotgun at the goal line and they get stuffed? I mean, it's insane. So, I mean, to not do it is just malpractice. But yeah, I will say the Lions defense still has major issues. I mean, yeah, they got to Darnold who was seeing ghosts, but we saw what the Rams did to Darnold as well. And it's not like the Rams have a great defense. You got to go back. The Bills put up 50 on Detroit. The 49ers should have put up 50, and they weren't at full strength. They had a couple bad Purdy throws. Otherwise, they probably win that game. Even the Bears, their dead offense, put up 350, 400 yards. So there's a path. The Lions really struggle with mobile quarterbacks, like really bad. They play cover one, ton of man, they blitz. McLaurin's gonna have to have a big day. It's not like they've had an explosive passing offense. It's not like this is the Bills or the Ravens, so maybe the Lions will be all right. But historically, these playoff games with a high total, this total is 55.5. Indoors, go over. I think 7 of the last 8 with a total of 54 or more have gone over. It would be over or nothing for me. 55 is a key number, and you need 55 or better. But I don't see how Washington stops Detroit. I mean, their defense is really bad. They're 27th against the run. They play a ton of man. Goff was the number one quarterback in the NFL against man coverage this year. I don't know how they get stops because they're not going to get pressure, and their secondary is bad. So what can Daniels do? What makes this tough, even for the total, but also the side. I mean, you could also get a backdoor here because Washington's going to put up some points. Fourth down variance. There will be many fourth downs in this game. Washington has the number one EPA, so expected points added, of any team over the past 20 years on fourth downs. They're the most aggressive team on fourth downs this year, only behind the Lions. So do the Lions, and they've gotten like all of them. Do they keep getting those fourth downs? If not, it could be a long day because you're going to get the ball back to Detroit and they're going to score. So there's a lot of variance with the fourth down calls in this game. Someone I do like, Sam Laporta over yardage, I think 48 and a half. Last year's last two playoff games, 9 catches, 9 catches. He's healthy now. And if you look over his past 5 games, he's averaging 5.8 catches for 67 yards. Over his first 11, about 2.8 for 35. Healthy, getting targeted. Washington cannot cover tight ends. So I think Laporta has a big day. The spread, I'm undecided on. I kind of like the over. I think it could come down to a backdoor. It could come down to just one or two fourth downs that both these teams are probably going to go. There's probably going to be like 6 or 7, at least, fourth downs in this game. I do feel confident in the Lions scoring, though. So maybe like a Lions team total over, because the Lions
Yeah,
should get.
I'm looking right now. You can get basically even odds anywhere after 33 and a half points.
Yeah, I
I,
think they
I,
should get the 34 plus.
would it shock you if they win this game
40
like
plus.
40 to 17 or something like
No,
that?
no.
So, if you wanted to get aggressive, you can get basically plus 270 at over 39 and a half. If you wanted, if you think they could score like 45, you can get 3-1, 4-1. I mean, I think this could be one of their regular season games. Now, once they got to 40 and had a decent lead, I think with like 6-7 minutes, I think they would be pretty careful given what's on the line here. But I could see, would it shock you at halftime if they got 24, 27-ish points? And they're going to
No.
come out fucking firing. I mean, this is a pretty big moment for Ben Johnson right now. Obviously, the connection of him and Brady, and it's kind of crazy, but feels like he might go to the Raiders. But just a pretty big muscle flex of his team's healthy, and he just knows, like, maybe not this individual game, but for them to win the Super Bowl, like, it's going to be more on his shoulders than it is. Like, Aaron Glenn can only do, he can blitz all he wants. I mean, their players are their players, right? Like, offensively, like, their margin for error just over the next, whatever, 6, 12, 18, 180 minutes is like they got to score a lot of points. Like they
Yep.
gotta, they can't be punting often, and I expect. I mean, this is kind of the culmination of this guy's career as a coordinator, kind of a muscle flex, like his almost Kyle Shanahan moment for the Atlanta Falcons with Matty Ice. Now, obviously, Kyle, they blew it at the end, which ironically has bled into his Niner career. But that stretch with Julio and Matt Ryan was really kind of got the ball rolling for the guy, right? Obviously,
Yep.
he had momentum, and same thing here with Ben Johnson. I like the Lions. I think there's just a lot of pressure on the Lions, and this is I don't know if the game that's really going to come to fruition, but I like that there. Okay, let's go to Sunday. As you alluded to before we hopped on, the weather in Philadelphia, and I lived there for a couple years, and you're obviously from that area. It can be pretty cold, especially in the middle of January, and that's a pretty big factor here for a team that plays in a dome in the Rams. Now the Rams obviously went from looking pretty crappy, I thought, down the stretch of the season to just playing a pretty impressive game. And maybe it was, you tell me, is that just a perfect matchup for the Rams playing Minnesota? They beat them twice this year. Obviously, their front is powerful, fast, and the Minnesota Vikings offensive line is not good. Sam Darnold had negative momentum coming from the playoff game. And I don't know where you stand, but one take I had is like, listen, Kevin O'Connell's been anointed as like a McVay, a Shanahan, a LaFleur. He's got no big wins in his career. He's
Yep.
basically like a taller, skinnier, better regular season version of Mike McDaniel. But in that game specifically, and I'm not against passing the ball, but when your quarterback's really rattled and your offensive line is getting smoked, 10-3 in the first half, even when it's 17-3, if you just get a sustainable drive, maybe get a field goal, you settle everything down, maybe 17-6, then you get a turnover, like you're not totally out of the game. And he just is obsessed with passing. It's like, this is not going to work, Kevin. And I thought he gets pretty pass happy. That's why big picture, like if you're just going to insert JJ McCarthy next year, a guy that literally came from a college program that was run heavy, that's never been dependent, it's going to be a tough transition conversation for a separate day. But overall, like maybe that's just a perfect matchup. And we saw early in the season, like the Eagles just have a lot more talent than the Rams because there's not a person. I was thinking about this today. If you just polled every GM in the league, would you want Sirianni or McVay? It'd be 32-0 McVay, right? Including the Eagles. And then if you said McVay, you got to hire Sirianni. What position would he give Sirianni? He'd be like his wide receiver coach or tight end coach, right? He wouldn't even be his coordinator. But the Eagles are kind of uniquely suited because, like, yeah, Sirianni doesn't really fuck with either. It's like Kellen gets to run that, and Vic definitely gets to run that. And that defensive line, I mean, Jalen Carter, pretty big muscle flex for Howie. Like, yeah, we'll take a swing. Little bumpy early on. Now the guy looks like, I don't know, Chris Jones 2.0.
Nolan
N'Kobe Dean,
Smith too. Nolan
yeah,
Smith's
I
coming
mean,
on as well.
so all their young guys, I mean, the two corners, DeJean and Mitchell, are studs. CJ Gardner is bringing them just a physical element that they clearly lacked last year. And
Zach
I
Bond
do,
is an all-pro. They brought him in to be an edge rusher. He's an all-pro at linebacker, which was a huge position of need. That's been massive. But yeah, they definitely will miss Dean a little bit here.
because Owen Burks last year, when he had to come in, the 49ers lost Dre Greenlaw in the Super Bowl with Achilles. And throughout the season, when they'd get guys banged up, like he is a major drop off if you have a solid starter. And N'Kobe's kind of come into his own. So I want to take the Rams here. I just think there might be a pretty big talent gap, just player for player, and ultimately the coaching advantage. I don't know if it can totally rear its head because I don't really know like what. It's not like Sirianni's telling Kellen or Vic Fangio what to do.
Yeah, I mean Fangio McVay, that they have some history. Fangio famously kind of put out the blueprint against McVay in the regular season when he was with
Oh,
the
with the
Bears
Bears, yeah, yeah.
that Belichick took in the Super Bowl and shut down the Rams, and then they had their rematch earlier this year where McVay had a good script early, but then Fangio ended up getting the better of him. McVay, this is a top spot for the Rams. I mean, you played Monday night, so you were on shorter
On the
rest.
road,
Yeah, and now you're going across the country, and you're an indoor team going outdoors into weather. Could be snow, could be some wind, and one of the things that I think contributed to that last week is I do think it's a good matchup in a way. Vikings are really zone heavy, blitz. Stafford's been really good against both this year. But McVay rested all of his starters. Week 18, didn't care about the seed. He's got an older quarterback. He's got guys that hadn't been rested since I think their bye was week 5. I think it was most important for Stafford. He looked fresh
they look good.
indoors. Yeah, I mean, he looked kind of like how he did in that Buffalo game when they went toe to toe with Buffalo and won a game in the 40s. But we've also seen Stafford outdoors this year. I mean, you want to look Rams outdoors. This is I kind of like the first half under in this game. These are two of the worst first quarter offenses in the NFL. I mean, the Eagles start slow every week. Last week they got a fumbled kickoff on the first play of the game, which led to a touchdown. But these are horrible early first quarter offenses, especially the Rams outdoors on the road. Here are their games. They played 5 games outdoors this year. They were down 10-6 at the half against the Bears, down 13-3 against the Seahawks, 3-3 against the Niners, and that was a game with weather. Down 9-6 at the Jets, and they were up 14-10 at New England. Cumulative score 45-32. Average score they were down 9.6 to 6.4 in those games. So, yeah, these are also two top 6 red zone defenses. Both offenses have been struggling in the red zone. And the Eagles just, yeah, they tore them apart, and they didn't even have Devontae Smith in that first meeting. You can say the Rams also didn't have their right tackle. I haven't seen they didn't have Higbee, who I think is going to play. But the problem for the Rams is that the Eagles' offensive line can neutralize
Is good.
the Rams' pass rush. And the Rams' secondary is not very good. Now, Hurts was last week just rust and the concussion. He's holding the ball too long. I don't think A.J. Brown's fully healthy. And then the weather, some wind, that could help the Rams, like because you're gonna have to sell
Well,
out to try to stop the run here.
well, why wouldn't you just do that? Put 9 in the box and be like, okay, Jalen, you beat us. Because
Yeah.
down, I would say the majority of the season, he had a couple moments, but it has been a lot of struggle. And I do think we can make fun of the book reading all you want. I think the AJ Brown Jalen Hurts thing. I mean, that you can't tell me anything else beside there's something weird going on there. Like he's not just reading the book to he's trying to calm down so he doesn't attack Jalen because he thinks he's getting open and fucking Jalen can't see anything. In their passing game, that's why when anyone's trying to be critical of Kellen Moore, where it's like, okay, I understand the Chargers or like button heads with McCarthy. Like in this situation, like if your quarterback just is in the pocket and doesn't see anything and then nothing happens, like that's not always on the coach, especially when you got AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert running routes. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they have an identity crisis. I don't know exactly what's going on because the pieces are there. You got Barkley, who's ran for 2,000 yards. Goddard, two great receivers, one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, quarterback who's performed well at the highest levels. But something's off. I like the offensive, the structure and how they want to operate, and something is so off. I can't put my finger on it because a lot of what they do is not Helen Moore-esque. So I don't know if it's like they can't mesh what Hertz wants to do, and then Sirianni maybe is also trying to put his say in, and that's why the script is really bad. Like they can never score early. So I don't.
They're lucky that Howie's such a good GM. They nailed the two corner picks because their DBs were
And they
terrible,
went and
and
got
then they,
Barkley.
yeah, and they got Barkley and they got Fangio. That is really kind of because when you're like last week, I had a buddy in the league text me. He's like, if the Packers just played a above average game, the Eagles would have been in major trouble. But fucking Jordan Love looked like me or you out there. So it's like when you just can't. I mean, their offense for a team like you said that isn't just loaded like high priced. These are like Lane Johnson's a Hall of Famer. AJ's been one of the better players of his generation. Saquon not going to be a Hall of Famer because he'll probably never get the numbers, but is a Hall of Fame talent. It's like it's pretty crazy how much they struggle. It's in Green Bay. I mean, solid effort by Halfley, but that's not exactly the 85 Bears from a personnel standpoint, is it?
And their top corner was out,
The
Jair
linebacker
Alexander.
Cooper 56 is a monster. That guy's
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah. The Packers also got so they got the Eagles got away with it. I mean, their defense is really good, but Jenkins got hurt. Then Packers are the worst backup guards in the NFL. I mean, they were
Oh
looking
my
practice squad
God.
guys,
Oh,
just getting holding calls
Jesus.
at every play. They also lost three of their starting receivers to injury. Like it was insane. The Eagles got away with that offensive performance because number one, their defense was really good, and number two, the Packers they were so inept. But a part of that was just all the injuries and then the turnover. On the first play of the game, the missed field
The,
goal.
the, the, the guard play is, I mean, that's as bad as you'll see in the NFL. I mean, that was,
There was three holding calls within the first two drives on the same guard, the backup guard.
but then he yanked him, put the other guy in, and
But
toward
the
the
other
end of
guy,
the
he
game,
got a hold.
and that guy flew into the center. It looked like he broke his ankle.
Yeah, that was bad news. So yeah, I like the first half under. I think this will be lower scoring early. I do think that what the Eagles they're going to look back at that first. It's like something's still off with the passing attack. I don't know if they solve that in a week, but I do think that they want to. They're going to come out and they're going to run the ball. They're the most run heavy team in the NFL. Them and the Packers, and they're going to want to wear down the Rams, and they're going to rely on their defense. And that's what happened in the first meeting. Barkley had 75 yards at the half, which is really good, but he finished with 250. He went off in the second half. The Rams' defensive line just wore down. And so, yeah, I think this will be lower scoring. I think the Rams will be more run heavy this week. Cooper Kupp's just not the same guy. Eagles can play more man. They can get pressure without blitzing. Stafford outdoors. It's going to be tough for them. I- It's good. Nakua is going to have to go nuts. I don't know. He's probably going to have 12 catches or something. And they're going to have to hold up in the red zone. Both these defenses are good in the red zone, but I think I need 7 to bet the Rams given all the situations. But McVay versus Fangio, great chess match. I'm curious. McVay sometimes has these wrinkles with different formations on what he's going, and we'll see if Fangio has a wrinkle. But McVay has been good in these spots. He's 16-7 against the spread on short rest, 12-2 his last 14 games. There's something when he goes like even across the country, short rest, he gets his team, he gets the most out of his team in these situations. But yeah, good coordinator battle here, especially, and I've been impressed with Shula too on the defensive side, but
Oh,
especially Fangio versus McVay.
totally.
That's going to be a fascinating watch. But first half under for me, I could see the Rams would probably need 7.
I do think obviously there's no topping when you win a Super Bowl. But, in this, I'm not trying to take anything away from McVay. It's not like, his Super Bowl did come against Zach Taylor, who I don't know if, in decades is going to be remembered as, it's not like Tom Coughlin. Like, who'd you beat in the Super Bowl? Oh, Belichick twice. But I do think this would be by far, and he's got 8 playoff victories. I mean, his best. This would be like his Picasso moment as a coach to go on the road and beat Philly. Like you said, factoring in the short week, factoring in this team wasn't supposed to be even that good. They win the division. They beat the shit out of Minnesota. it would be a pretty big like crowning achievement early, for the in the guy's career, I think. And again, like Super Bowl, there's no topping that, but you do have moments throughout your coaching career. It's listen, Kyle Shanahan had a terrible year. He has had some pretty incredible wins in the playoffs. Like went on the road and beat Aaron Rodgers in a freezing cold game with Jimmy Garoppolo doing nothing. Like you have those type moments. Like how the hell did you pull that off? Andy's had many in Philly. He had a ton of those throughout his career. When
Harbaugh's had a bunch going on the
yeah, it's
road
like
against like Brady and
it's
Manning.
it's just a big deal as it goes on. The thing about Belichick, you remove his 6 Super Bowls, he has a ton of those over the years. Like, how did he beat the Ravens in that game? Like, what did he do to Mike Tomlin in that game? It's just like those are moments that, like, oh yeah, this guy's a lock Hall of Famer, one of the greats. So that's the thing that would make me nervous if I'm an Eagles fan. Like, everyone acknowledges our team's better, but it's like this coach clearly is just cooking up some because everyone's like Kevin O'Connell, McVay, same guy. No, not exactly. Like, not even close.
Yeah, and McVay, he'll deserve not, and maybe it's just random and not correlated, but if they win this game and Stafford looks great outdoors, that's probably related to his decision that everyone gave him shit for resting everyone, not worried about the seed, but he's wanted to stay healthy and get his older quarterback rest. So if he looks good here after not looking good down the stretch, uh, that'll be another feather in his cap. But yeah, Rams just got to keep this close, keep it low scoring, ugly, stops in the red zone, and then look, there's weather. Jake Elliott's been uh, not doesn't look great.
Looks
You get a
awful.
couple missed field goals here. You get a turnover. You get Hurts to make a boneheaded throw. Because I also don't think AJ Brown might be. I think he's still just not 100% with his knee, and there's just something going on there other than that. But yeah, I'm excited for that one. But the wet, you got to keep an eye on the weather. It could be bad.
Okay, let's get to the main event. Um, I have no clue. I see three scenarios out of the four that are possible. Ravens, Bills win either one in a closer game, just a good NFL game. The Ravens, like what happened in the regular season, separate as the game goes on. I have a hard time seeing uh, the Bills winning a game by like 15, 20 points or just, a commanding victory. Like to me, if they're going to win, they're going to win a close game. I just can't see like them doing like looking like what the Rams just looked like against Minnesota. You're like, they just won 31 to whatever. But this is just fantastic. Obviously, the storylines speak for themselves. Uh, Ton of pressure on both teams, both quarterbacks who are just, I mean, look like they fucking mastered the position last weekend. I just, I'm leaning your squad here, and the Bills are an underdog at home. But the Ravens defense is just to me the biggest difference. If we just both go, offenses are awesome, quarterbacks are dominant. Uh, Obviously, Derrick Henry is much more famous than James Cook, but I think James Cook's emergence over this last year and a half. I mean, he's changed their offense. But is Buffalo good enough on defense to slow down this freight train? Because I don't know. You could argue there's when you get an all time great quarterback, they're just going to figure it out. But I do know that Baltimore is just really damn good on defense. So yeah, they might not stop them every time, but they're going to get more stops than Buffalo. So that's where I would lean right now. It just feels like Baltimore's the better team.
Yeah, I make it a coin flip. And the Ravens defense since like week 11 has been number one in the NFL. They made some changes personnel wise. They put Humphrey in the slot, kept him there, put Darius Washington back at safety, got rid of some of the veterans, and then put Kyle Hamilton back there, then changed how they communicate. Kyle Hamilton's kind of directing everybody after the play comes in to Roquan.
If
And they
if
made
we
some
just
they
if we just
simplified.
looked at it from a personnel standpoint, how many of Buffalo's 11 starters on defense would start for the Ravens? Three.
Um, let's see. Probably so none of the safeties. Teron Johnson, well, you got Humphreys an all pro. Teron Johnson, he's their best defender. He's their slot. I don't even know if he would start. Probably Christian Bedford. Rasul Douglas is getting up there in age. Milano's as well. One of the edge
Edge
rushers like
rusher. Yeah.
Epineza or Rosu because the Ravens edge rushers are not great. That's
But
like kind of their
that's what we're
weakness.
talking about here. There is a pretty substantial difference of how many guys would start for, one team, like a personnel difference right now. And that's, Buffalo, if that's why I like Baltimore in this game is the personnel on defense.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that
McDermott's obviously a really, really high-end defensive coordinator, right? And
yeah.
defensive
So
mind.
the one of the props wise, I like Isaiah Likely. One of the reasons I do is the Bills can't cover over the middle of the field. Their safeties are bad. Linebackers aren't great in coverage. And I'm curious to see how they play this because in the first meeting, the Ravens ran it 34 times for 271 yards, averaged 8 yards per carry. Bills and McDermott, by definition, they want to play their safeties back, prevent explosive plays. The problem is they're not great at stopping the run. They're undersized in the defensive line. They're not gonna be able to stop Henry. So I think they're gonna have to change. They're gonna have to go a little heavier here. And likely he lined up, I think, out wide last week without Flowers. Lined up out wide 28 times in the slot, 15 times. I think he could have a huge day over the middle of the field. And this should be a competitive game, like game script wise. It's not going to be like a blowout where the Ravens then just run it and end the game. But the biggest difference with these two teams, you have MVP caliber quarterbacks, great offenses, like unbelievable offenses, good offensive lines. Quarterbacks who aren't going to take sacks, can use their legs, like a lot of similarities in the offenses. You don't have like star-studded receivers, but you have a lot of nice weapons, and they do a lot of different things in the run game, mainly because you're quarterback.
Do you think Flowers plays in this game or probably not?
No, uh, and I mean in the first meeting he only had like one catch for 15 yards. Like that's the Bills' corners are pretty good, so he's not even that. He hurts a little bit in like play action, like deep shot, but the Ravens are going to just like do what they did in the first meeting. It's like throw over the middle of the field, use the tight ends, use the backs, throw to Justice Hill more. And that's a weakness of the Bills. The biggest difference in this game is that the Ravens have one of the best run defenses in the NFL, so they can stop the Bills' rushing attack without changing what they do. Whereas the Bills do not have a good rush defense, so they're either going to get gashed or they got to change what they do. And the Ravens are also much stronger up the gut and in the center, in the middle of the field with their safeties and linebackers than the Bills. Now, I should mention that Bills fans are probably yelling this somewhere that in the first meeting, I mean, Teron Johnson is one of the best slot corners in the NFL. He didn't play. And then a couple of their linebackers didn't play. You had like Nicholas Morrow and Balin Spector out there. I think Eagles just signed Morrow to their practice squad and Spector, special teams guy. So they were missing some starters there, but just schematically, it's not going to work. So I'm curious to see how they play it. The way that I think it plays out, because the Ravens D has been trending up, the Bills D has been trending down, even though they've been getting healthier. And they are the second worst defense over the middle of the field in the NFL this year. The just numbers wise, Lamar Jackson is the most profitable quarterback in NFL history against the spread in the first half of games. He has insane numbers. There's always like a little shock to the system. I also think in this matchup, like they're going to be able to come out and run the ball and sustain drives a little easier than the Bills, who are probably going to get stuffed on a couple runs, and they might end up punting a few more times in the first half. So Ravens first half money line, even though I think it's a coin flip game, makes sense to me. Guess who's the most profitable quarterback in NFL history in the second half against the
Josh
spread? Josh
Allen.
Allen. Josh Allen. He's 15-2 against the spread this year in the second half. 74, 44, and 3 against the spread in the second half. Most profitable quarterback NFL history, second half against the spread. So, and that makes sense to me. Like Ravens are going to come out. They don't really have to change what they do on defense. They're going to be able to sustain drives running it. And additionally, touching on back what you said, Orr's done a good job this year in his first year, but a lot of that was player driven. And McDermott, still a much better defensive coach. I trust McDermott to make better second half adjustments. Same thing I told you in the Super Bowl. Why I like the Niners first half last year instead of the full game against the Chiefs is like I trust Spags more than Wilkes to make adjustments, and that's what came to fruition. So
So
they could
do
have
you
an
think
edge
last
there.
week was more personnel issue with the Steelers or a schematic issue with Tomlin and Austin? Like why do they look like they got no shot right now to stop them where they used to? It feels like they're just completely lost.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really truly know the answer. I think that like so much of what they did was driven by the greatness of Watt. Like they would fall off like 8 points per game. And I don't know if Watt's either fallen off or he's not, he wasn't healthy. Like he just wasn't having the same impact as he normally would in the run and the pass. And I would just a huge gap. They also had a lot of injuries. Um, but yeah, I mean they always had Lamar's number, but the last two times, not so much. But Watt's impact just it wasn't the same this year. I don't know if he was healthy or if we're just seeing a decline
Because
in
I
his
think the
production.
hard part is, and they've, one, they at first they took away Henry, or they took away Lamar, and then Henry went off, and they kind of were like going back between, which guy do we stop? Because it's hard to take them both on some of the like the concepts of the zone read or whatever you
Yeah, they
want to.
basically just said we're going to try to take out Henry and live with Lamar running it. Um,
That'll be interesting what McDermott does, like, because you
yeah,
can't. I could live with Lamar running around. I don't think you can just let Henry go for a buck 70. I think you're a
the
lock to lose.
the Ravens also went multiple backs or multiple tight ends on 90% of snaps. They had 15 snaps last week with Josh Jones in there as the sixth offensive lineman. And the Bills used their base defense, which is when there's not an extra D back on the field, less than any team in the NFL. They use dime the highest with 60 backs. So like you're not going to do that if the Ravens come out with six offensive linemen, likely and Andrews. You have 60. Like it's not going to work. And then so yeah, it's tough. The Ravens are like a unique offense that because McDermott and the defense that he built in Buffalo, it's built to stop most modern offense. Most
Yeah.
offenses are like spread, but the Ravens have like a different, unique offense, which is one of their advantages in that most of the defenses don't see offenses like them on every week, and they're not built to stop offenses like that, which is why the Ravens numbers historically, they're like this year they were like a top 10 offense of all time. Same, and like part of that is just defenses aren't built to stop them and don't see it often. At least the Bills saw it earlier this year. We'll see what McDermott does adjustment wise. But that makes sense to me. Ravens first half. And then what happens? Bills are down. Let Josh Allen be Josh Allen. Make heroic plays. Not going to get beat. Not going to be under a ton of pressure here. Ravens don't generate like a ton of pressure. He can use his legs, buy time, hit some passes downfield. Josh Allen magic. Ravens get tight on the road. And then it comes down to, you know, like, can the Ravens get a couple first downs in the game, or are they punting it back down? And can he drive to score? Like that's how I think the game's going to play out. Like Raven, obviously, this I could be way off. Like it could be a fumble in the kickoff, opening kickoff, and it changes everything. But I could see that Ravens come out. It's a good matchup for them. Bills are going to have to adjust, and they're not going to be able to win this game running. Ravens can move the ball running and throwing it in the middle of the field. Josh Allen, second half, seen it before, can easily do
Yeah.
it. That's how I think the game's going to play out. So, yeah, I'm probably going to have some Ravens first half, some likely props, like likely to score a touchdown, likely over reception yards, and then I might have some Bills second half money line if they're trailing at the half. But I'll be rooting for the Ravens. I'm a Ravens fan. Go Ravens.
You
And
can
then
parlay it, basically if you take Lamar and Josh to each get a rushing touchdown throughout the game, it's basically 5-1 plus 490. Because like you
they'll be
said,
running a ton
if you like it in that situation, Josh doing shit down the stretch down a little bit, he easily could score. And obviously Lamar's a threat to score against. I mean, he could
anybody.
score against the
Yep.
85 Bears. I
Yep.
know you got to run, but I got to hit you on the national championship. Uh, it feels like it's hard to see Ohio State losing, but the one thing I think you got to say with Notre Dame, and I think you saw this in the Final Four, is like all the four teams have high end dudes on defense. And the one thing Texas has a really good defense. I don't know how Notre Dame wouldn't be considered in that class. You could even argue are their DBs or their corners better than what Texas was rolling out. And I do think that I always screw up his name, but Kittelkowski, whoever the defensive coordinator for Texas, former Boise State guy, obviously a
Kwiatkowski, yeah.
really good defensive coordinator and did a really good job. Obviously, Tate win, that's the third wide receiver, but I think you would live, every team in the country would live, you're playing Ohio State with, yeah, okay, we neutralize the other two guys. Tate's going nuts. Like, we can live with that. So, does Notre Dame have a shot here?
It's going to be tough. The thing is that I think the two keys of this game. One, I mean, Ohio State has let up nothing on the ground. I mean, if you go back, their three playoff games, they're the number one rated rush defense in college football. They played Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas. Three really good, really, really good rushing attacks. Two of the best offensive lines in Oregon and Texas. They had 96 rushes for 187 yards, less than 2 yards per carry. If you remove the sacks, just 3.8 yards per carry. And by the way, Ohio State had 16 sacks for 118 yards. That's important because they can get pressure without blitzing. And Riley Leonard's been really bad under pressure when he's not being blitzed, outside the top 100 this year. So I don't know how Notre Dame's going to be able to run it here. And Leonard's going to be under pressure, like the Ohio State defensive ends. And like the way to beat Ohio State is like their corners are kind of their weakness, relatively speaking. But the Penn State, I mean, Notre Dame doesn't have great receivers. So it's hard for me to see Notre Dame moving the ball here at all. I mean, their offense was already limited. You go back to the Georgia game; they scored on a kick return and a fumble, and they're playing a backup quarterback. Penn State, they're down. Their offense can't do anything, and they found a way, but they get a turnover late. But their offense is not that dynamic, especially if they can't run the ball. And then on the other side of the ball, Notre Dame plays more man coverage than any team in college football. Now, they were great in it, and their corners were great all year, and they even lost Morrison. They're arguably their top corner early in the season. But you can't play man. I mean, they did it last year, but you don't play exclusively man or zone. Yeah. But are they going to change it up? Because Texas played zone, and they said, we're going to put our attention on Jeremiah Smith. We're not going to let you beat us deep. We're going to make you drive the field and then make mistakes. And that's what happened. And they were in the game. If they could score at the goal line. The other thing is Ohio State's goal line red zone defense is historically good. So even when Notre Dame gets down there, how are they punching it in the end zone? I don't know. I do also think that if you look, Notre Dame, they didn't play many elite receivers this year. I mean, the passing offense that they faced, the Georgia was their backup quarterback. Who on Georgia scares you on the outside? I mean, maybe Arian Smith goes to the NFL. He had one catch for 67 yards. Go back to Penn State, their receivers are all terrible. It was Tyler Warren who had 6 catches for 75 yards. But you go back, the only 2 games where they played like elite receivers, USC, Mekhi Lemon had 9 catches for 133 yards. USC had 4 players with a catch over 20 yards. They had almost 600 yards of offense in that game. Jeez. And they recently made a quarterback change. They were going with their backup. And then Louisville, who had a really good offense. Ja'Cory Brooks, who will play in the NFL, he had 5 for 71 and 2 touchdowns. Colin Lacey had 5 for 71. Louisville had 3 players with a reception over 20 yards. So that's it. Like Surratt for Indiana's good. He had 4 for 70. Other than that, they played like service academies, backup quarterback. So this is scary going up against Ohio State if you're going to play man. Really good. Al Golden's a really good defensive coordinator. What does he do? He's got to mix it up. I do think Egbuka is worth a look props wise. He's over 19 and a half receiving yards. Over 19 and a half longest reception, I should say. He's done that in 9 of 15 games this year. And I think there's going to be attention on Jeremiah Smith. He's good against man or zone. They're going to have him running crossers. And the way you beat this Notre Dame cover one when they are man, you got to take deep shots. And I think they're going to take them here. And against Notre Dame, the past 2 years, when Marvin Harrison was there, he had 7 for 96 and 9 for 90. And if you want a long shot, Egbuka over 90 yards, all yards, over 90 yards plus, I don't know, probably plus 350, plus 400. He's hit 90 the last 2 years against Notre Dame. I think he's going to get a lot of looks here. And he needs 93 to set the all-time school record. And this is his last game. So even if they're up big,
yeah,
it's probably throw him a couple more times.
They're Mike Evans moment for him.
Yep. Ohio State also changed their running scheme after their offensive line injuries, and they run more gap runs. Notre Dame struggles there. So it's going to be really tough for Notre Dame. I'm curious to see how much man they run and what they do, what Al Golden does. The path for Notre Dame, you got to get pressure. Al Golden's going to send pressure. You got to Howard can struggle under pressure and make a mistake. You got to get turnovers. This is Notre Dame's done all year. It's what they've done all playoffs. Get turnovers. They're really well coached. Marcus Freeman's got to be aggressive in the right times. Maybe like a crazy special teams play. You got to steal possession. And then in the middle eight, Notre Dame's been the best team in college football in the middle eight. And we saw it all of their playoff games. So the final 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half. I mean, you saw there was a minute and a half stretch against Georgia that basically decided the game.
10 point swing against Penn State.
10 point swing against Penn State. So like they got to steal possession there. So it's going to come down to their D scheme, but it's just hard for me to see how Notre Dame moves the ball. Notre Dame prop by like Aeneas Williams, their back, who's getting a ton of run. It's good in pass protection. They could throw them. Texas threw to their backs all day last weekend. I think he can go over his reception yards, but it's probably going to be Ohio State. It kind of reminds me of this game is very similar to Chiefs Texans, in that just the talent and the matchup isn't great, but you have a good defense, and you're gonna have to steal some things. You're gonna have to be aggressive on fourth downs, and then you're gonna have to create turnovers with your defense. So, but it's just gonna be hard for them to play man. And Will Howard's been the number 2 quarterback in college football against man all game, the way that they have been, because this is a different animal. Penn State's receivers are horrendous. They all even transferred. They transferred. All of them transferred after the game. They were not good all year. Georgia backup quarterback didn't have great receivers. In Indiana, this is a different animal. So, yeah, I fear that Ohio State's just going to hit a bunch of deep shots because the receivers are so good. And then Notre Dame playing from behind against Ohio State, it's probably not going to end well because you're just not, you can't, I don't think they're going to be able to run on Ohio State. So, yeah, it's got to be a Freeman and Al Golden masterclass, and they're going to have to get some mistakes from Ohio State.
Good take there, Stuckey. Have a good weekend. Make some money and look forward to watching your Ravens play on the heavyweight matchup on Sunday night.
Yeah, we only got one good game last weekend. Let's get some.
Yeah, I think we got 3 out of 4.
Uh,
I feel some good vibes coming.
yeah, same. I think we'll get some good games. I think I got a funny feeling the Texans keep it close, but I could be well. But I think the other two should be competitive, and I think Bills Ravens should be a classic. So yeah, 3 good days of football. Enjoy, and I'll talk to you next weekend, brother.
Okay, see you.